But above all, thank you for welcoming me here with you in the fraternity and the international team. I always feel welcome and at home here. So I'm happy to share these few words with you. My focus will be on the evolution of our gaze, letting our vision getting wider. This is something that I received during these days, to widen our vision. I remember when I was a child, we used to see this guy and we got the impression that he is a strange guy and that we should be distant from him. And that's what I did. When I went for an experience of work, they asked me, where do you live? And so I used to tell the name of my street, which is Hope Street, La Esperanza. And they don't register. Then I tell them near that shop. There's a big shop nearby. Some do relate. But these workers, when they recognized where I live, they told me, near Italiano. The nickname Italiana, the Italian one. She was renowned by them in the past as a prostitute. The man that I used to see from the other side of the street from a distance was her son. Fast forward and I became a priest, and in Malta, like in some countries, we go to do the blessing of houses. And I got the opportunity to visit and bless the houses of my street. It was always my wish to go and discover the houses nearby. So when I became a priest, I had the opportunity to sneak in and see the houses that I could not see when I was young. And I went to bless the house of Italiana. And when she saw me, she told me, "Itlab ali ya Jimmy." I still remember the eyes of that lady, the faith she has in God, when she told me, pray for me. Addressing me by my name, with familiarity, and with faith. Her eyes helped me to widen my vision. Till that time, I did not know her name. Nowadays, sometimes I find a small paper at my home by her daughter telling me to offer Mass for her. I start with this because it's sharing our home means to widen the vision to what God wants us to see. This is what I find the call of this week, to widen the call to see how God sees. This is our responsibility and mission. So I am proposing 4 steps according to the theme that we have. Sharing our home in Nazareth, an invitation to see from below, not from above, but from below, like Jesus in Nazareth. With the family, we are invited to see from within, not from without, not from a distance, from within. In creation, I saw an invitation to see with, avec. And in our reflection on fraternity yesterday, it's about seeing and recognizing the other as a brother, as a sister. These are the 4 steps. So when we're reflecting on responsibility and mission, we're making a decision to discern and reform rather than lament and condemn. We can see the statistics and lament about our world. That is not our responsibility. That is not our mission. To lament or, worse, condemn. Very often, as a church, we can be perceived as such. I, as a priest, the people can stand 2 steps back because they see me as coming to impose on their life, robbing the freedom that God gave them. Doesn't mean that we should be retreating, that we should stand on the side. We have a responsibility and a mission, which is to discern and reform as a fraternity now, not the church in Rome. We are part of the church, a cell of the church. We also are called to discern and reform. That is what we're trying to do. A few things about discernment between the bad spirit, coming from discouragement, bitterness, pessimism, anxiety, self-pity. We are called to follow the Spirit of God. It comes to us through moments where we feel comforted, where we were encouraged by a point or other in the talks or the example of someone in the fraternity. A moment that generates hope, something that leaves joy in you, fills you with confidence. So together, we are trying to distinguish now between those elements in us that come from the bad spirit and what happened during this week that was coming from the Spirit of God. If you find one thing that is coming from the Spirit of God, just take that. The responsibility is not to do everything, but to choose that one thing that comes from God and just do it. Share it. Live it. Charles de Foucauld spent his whole life finding that one thing. It seemed that he lost all his life, always searching for that one thing. But that one thing changed the church. Don't do everything. Choose one thing that fills you with God, fills you with joy, and share that. Something that I know about the method that I used in the rest of the presentation. I received this in a dialogue with Cardinal Czerny in the Bishops' meeting of Malta with the Dicastery for Integral Human Development. And he said, "You are not responsible for the development of people. No mother, no father says, I develop the children. You don't develop the children. You don't develop the people. But we discern what are the obstacles for the good life, no? To live a good life. What are the obstacles? We listen to that. We dialogue to listen to that. Then we reflect in front of those hopes and anxieties. What does the faith tell us to share? the human sciences, the knowledge that we have, together with the spirituality of Brother Charles, how does it help us to contribute in the reality of families today, in caring for creation, and creating fraternity where there is division? What are the insights? So we listen, we reflect, and then we give back. So that is what guides me in the few thoughts that I will be sharing. I try to see what you were listening to, what made resonance with you, what reflections came out from these talks this week, and possibilities of sharing, of giving back when you go back. You cannot go back only with souvenirs. You go back with the joy of sharing the love of God that you received. Mission is not a duty, but it's the joy of your life. We're not happy to share the beauty that we have received. What will we be living for? So mission is the joy of sharing something that you have received. But without you, it cannot arrive to others. Be it members of the fraternity, be it the church in your local context, be it society that you work in. The three areas are the part of the context where you are sent. The Instrumentum Laboris for the forthcoming Synod says, there is no mission without context. Here we discussed in general, but you know, together with the fraternity, with other experts in the local context, how to discover what is happening in your local context. And in our local context then, how can we reflect upon it? And what can we share? So what is happening here? I invite you to do the same exercise with your fraternities. To listen and dialogue, to reflect on the spirituality of Brother Charles, and to act by proposing something that gives life to others. So the first step, sharing our hope in Nazareth. Gilles Routier invited us to imagine, no? And I invite you to also do the same with each step. And he told us, imagine a home with the children playing around, no? And that is why I put this picture. So each team will be accompanied by a picture. At least we start with an imagination, no? I remember when I was young, we used to go to play and meet, the bigger family at my grandfather's house. So the adults, my parents and their brothers or sisters, speaking among adults, and us children playing, and roaming around. I remember once I went in the courtyard under the stairs, and I found a can, and I opened this can, and it was full of money. So I ran happily to my grandfather because I thought I found you something that you didn't know about, He wasn't that happy that I found his hideaway, But that remained, Why am I using that image? Because children go beyond. They explore more. Once I did forum theater. Forum theater is an exercise kind of theater where everyone participates. And we started this exercise in the big hall in the seminary We invited the people, they thought they will see something on stage, and instead they find themselves they had to participate. And I told them, now walk and use all the space. And the adults were walking in the middle. The children were already on the stage. They go beyond, they widen. Jesus comes to our home in Nazareth as a child. Jesus comes as a child to help us widen, to discover the treasure forgotten in a hidden corner in our world. The invitation to widen our vision. The invitation here is to distinguish between seeing the world with the eyes of the world or seeing reality, the world, with the eyes of God. Okay? So the child Jesus coming to Nazareth is inviting us, how do I see the world? How do I see realities of families? How do I see the changes? How do I see creation? With the eyes of the world or with the eyes of God? The eyes of the world are detached and instrumental to use. I find a can with money and I use it for myself. I go and hide it. I don't give it back. It's either detached or instrumental to use. I see what I can use and I be attentive to that, and I close my eyes to that which creates discomfort. If it creates discomfort, I didn't see it. Okay? This is the eyes of the world. The eyes of God help us to be attentive to the truth of what is happening around us. What is happening around us? We try to give time to stay with the changes, with the sufferings, with the difficult statistics, to the truth of what is happening around us, even if it causes discomfort. It's okay. Don't run away. The eyes of God are attentive to the pain and suffering, as well as the joys. He makes a feast with the people of Cana and Galilee, but also is attentive to the person on the side, blind, forgotten. But Jesus also makes a miracle, not only when he heals the blind or those who suffer from leprosy, but even invents a miracle to increase wine. A priest, my uncle, during a wedding, he said, you don't expect that kind of miracle. You expect a miracle to help the blind, but not to increase the wine. It seems to be wasteful. But God is interested in joy. When we are attentive to suffering, it's because God wants to share joy. Okay? So we widen our vision with the eyes of God and with the eyes of mercy. With the eyes of mercy. Not detached, but a way of seeing that is rooted in love. And that is what is the treasure that we discovered in the child Jesus in the home in Nazareth with Jill Routier. He didn't come from above, but he came from below. He didn't come to fill in the whole picture. I am here, I am here, I am here. He came as a little child, making space for others. Did not come to dominate and to use and abuse, but he came to learn how to work the fields, how to work as a carpenter, how to admire the time that a seed takes to grow, how long it takes for a tree to grow. But he also learned how to shape a table and create fellowship and invest in his ministry around the table. I can't remember her name. The person who spoke to us about creation. Sandra told us, if you destroy a table, you destroy all that process. Jesus enters in a way in creation, admiring, contemplating the seed, the tree, but also contemplating the work of his hands in order to shape table fellowship. This is the treasure that we carry, to see with the eyes of God and to approach reality, people, with the same attitude, with the same love of God. So what are the possibilities that we can put in practice with regards to this? So I'll read them in English and there's a possible translation. So maybe another place where Pope Francis quotes and refers to Charles de Foucauld is in Gaudete et Exultate, this document on holiness, on prayer, on the way of holiness, where he invites us to rediscover adoration, contemplation. How does adoration help us to see the world with the eyes of God? To become little, not to dominate, but to be attentive and to love. Another suggestion is about memory. Jesus takes 30 years in Nazareth, learning the stories, listening to Anna and Joachim telling the stories, whatever. So my question is here, how can we create spaces to listen to previous generations and appreciate their wealth, even in our fraternities? Indigenous cultures, like we were appreciating yesterday. How can we share this with society? But this morning I became aware also of a change from Charles de Foucauld to today. Charles de Foucauld entered Tamanrasset with the colonizers. And there was the issue with colonization, of looking from above, of destroying, of not respecting the culture, whatever. Today it's different with the issue of migration. So we have new questions to answer. For those who come in our spaces, what does it mean to nourish the roots of those who live amongst us but were not born in this place? In Malta, I try to invite the seminarians and deacons to work on this in our parishes. In the last 10 years in Malta, we had an increase of 20% of the population. In 10 years, 20% of the population of Malta increased, all people coming from different parts of the world, mostly Asia, Eastern European countries, a few from African countries. So I put this question, how will your parish integrate? Before I came, one of the deacons phoned me. We are giving a name to this group, this initiative. What should we name it? And I told him, enrich. Enrich. How do we enrich each other? Yes, and the third point on this, how can we share the way of Charles de Foucauld, not arrogance, but through brotherhood, friendship, goodness. How can we share this not by speaking about Charles de Foucauld, but by acting in the manner of Charles de Foucauld. Not just speaking about, but by acting like and helping the church to be like that. I hope the translators are managing well. We thank them now. So the family. So my imagination now invites you to think about this. What about entering an empty house? So the challenge that I felt after the day of reflection about the family was this. Entering an empty house. Some have experienced this now, sometimes with a loss of a very important person in their lives and their family. With it, we reflect on the sense of belonging, of being part of family. So, in this day about the family, we reflected and we stayed with statistics, with changes in society, with statistics of divorce, statistics of cohabitation. We also listened to issues of infertility. But we also shared on the clashes. Somehow we felt this day is not that comfortable. No? There were different movements within us as an assembly. And someone in our group was reflecting about the present society, where there is division, polarization. Those who dominate don't let us discuss. And someone said, we don't speak anymore. We don't speak anymore. But thankfully we spoke. And that is the gift of the second day. That we can speak even when we don't agree. We can speak even when we don't agree or when we don't see clearly. But what was the step that helped us to go a step further? I felt the person of Jesus. At some point I thought he's missing in the whole discussion. We can discuss ideas, ideals, something distant, the distance between the theory or the ideals of the teachings of the church and the complex reality of our society. But what helps us to go beyond that? Either this or that. Is it that? Either this or that. And that's why Jesus from within, seeing from within. What helped me was to listen to the pains and sufferings of real people. Children who suffer because they have to spend 3 days in this home with their father, 3 days in this home with this mother, and 1 day with their grandfather, and the next weekend with the other grandmother. The desire of women to have children. I listen to that as a gift. This is coming from God. How to stay with that, appreciate that. I heard of children born of free unions in a country where they have no papers and therefore they have no rights. The suffering in that particular context. Someone said, meeting gay people who are very religious, very pious, but part of them tells them, you're not part of the church. This is part of their experience. Also, the experience of young people who are afraid of taking a commitment because they listen to so many breakdowns in marriages, and yet they desire to take a lifelong commitment that stays. That is also part of the reality of young people that I encounter. And also, I remained also with this phrase, no? For us, Nazareth is Exodus. For us, Nazareth is Exodus. That, I think, originated from Venezuela, with so many and many who have to leave the countries. So, my point here is to approach the family from within, listening to the suffering, the reality, the joys, and from there reflect on how to share the gospel in a way that gives life. And these are some possibilities that we can do. One of them is to develop a spirituality on how to listen to wounded people. A spirituality on how to listen to wounded people. Maybe that could be the gift of our fraternity in our locality. Also touched by this reflection, or the deepening of the understanding of the Holy Trinity as an image of fecundity that gives life, of healing, and of communication. So going deeper into the mystery of our faith in a way that gives life to the dynamics of relationships within families. Also the possibility of understanding a bit more Amoris Laetitia, where it speaks about the beauty of love, the joy of love, Amoris Laetitia, the joy of love, and how to accompany those who don't fit into the square, no? Then our group reflected that Jesus was not incarnated in Eden, in the Garden of Eden. Jesus was incarnated in a complex, muddy Nazareth. Okay? And Amoris Laetitia can give us some insights on how to accompany by sharing the joy of the gospel, not by putting away the gospel. There are gifts that can strengthen people, that can give light to people. And lastly also, how to develop a spirituality of Nazareth for families where very often, in our group at least we reflected, it is sometimes overly romanticized, as if each moment will be a wow experience, no? It's not like that. There's the ups and downs. And Jesus entered into that ordinary life and has a way how to live with that, in that. If not, how can we share that? And to receive it as well. As you know, I'm a celibate priest, and in Malta there is a couple, good friends of mine. They invited me to eat with them, and at one point she told me, and you priests don't think that since you are not married, it's all about sex. No, our life is not like that. The daily life, also our way of expressing our affection goes through so many challenging moments. So don't idealize and just put things in your head. So my point here is the spirituality of Nazareth has something important to say in how we live our daily lives. Creation. The image that I placed there, I chose it after I brought to mind an experience when I was a child. We were 4 brothers, okay, so you can imagine the fights that we had, apart from the mad things that we do. Like once I decided that I use my bed as a trampoline, only to break my bed. So I tried to create a fight with my brother to make him fall on the bed so that he gets the blame, not me, no? Didn't succeed. But in one of our fights, one of my projects ended up torn. I did a project, when we were in school, we used to make projects and pictures and writing, no typewriter, and I find it torn. It has torn something within me. That, for me, went a bit beyond the usual fights. Thankfully, the relationship is okay. But what I want to bring to mind in terms of creation is when what is dear to us is torn away, and that is what stayed with me during the session reflecting on creation. So here the invitation is to see with, because even that scrapbook, that project is part of me, both in terms of material coming from the world, but also work of human hands. The prayer during the Mass, fruit of the earth and work of human hands. So that integration, being with. I don't know whether we can manage to see, given that Gilbert here reflected on the monks of Tiberin, and they were discerning whether to remain or to leave. Should they remain, given that there is tension, there is the risk that they will be killed? Should they remain or stay? Let me see whether I chose the right. Give me a second, because I hope I chose the right.
Les oiseaux, c'est mou. La branche, c'est beau. Si vous partez, on ne saura pas où se poser.
I guess you understood the meaning of that. He said we were like birds and maybe it's time to fly. I said, no, you are the branches. If you're not there, we won't have a footing. And I was struck during our reflection on creation, that every plant needs another plant. This interrelationship with creation, with each other, and brought to mind that clip, which brings something important for us. And here we also reflected on the Sabbath, a new understanding of the place of the human person in creation. For some time we interpreted our creation story as a story of domination. We have the right to dominate. By inviting us to enter into the Sabbath as the climax of creation, we are invited to find a new way how to enter into the blessing of God, into the contemplation of the world, but also of your work, to rejoice and thank God on a Sunday for the work that you have done, Sometimes we just function, do, but not appreciate. How to live in what you're doing and to do it well with joy. So relation, the Sabbath, also the Sabbath as God who liberates, God who frees. And to free from those aspects that lead to slavery and to lead to destruction. And something that struck me here as well is to challenge the contradictions. Challenge the contradictions. We make a protest in favor of the environment, but lead a consumeristic lifestyle. How can we live in a more integral way? So the possibilities on this level, I hope I won't take too long. First of all, a lifestyle where, marked by the spirituality of Brother Charles, we choose simplicity, to let go of what is superfluous. The second is develop a spirituality of Brother Charles, recognizing that the way of love is the only way to build the kingdom. A spirituality of life fosters the way of contemplation of creation, but also a new way of living work. Not dominating, but participation in God who liberates. How can our work have this meaning, to liberate? And lastly, to appreciate a bit more Laudato Si and the liberating processes that enslave us. So here maybe we can explore with whom we can work in our society, who already work in terms of creation, in order to share this knowledge. In our school, the seminary where I live, we are inventing a new subject in the primary school so that we educate in integral human ecologies to help students see the world from the mindset of God. So we can be open to contribute on that level. The last part, that should not be creation but fraternity. Cut and paste, it does not work well. We can't see the cartoon very well, but at some stage, this wolf dressed, in sheep's clothing, wants to breathe a bit, because always with the mask of a sheep it was a bit too much, so he took it away, and he finds another wolf taking it away to breathe. And they tell each other, don't tell me there is no single sheep here. Don't tell me that there is no single sheep here. They are all wolves. Which makes us think, the imagination here, what if we enter a place where instead of brothers and sisters, we are wolves to each other? So the invitation to fraternity is crucial here. Yesterday, we were reflecting on the horrendous things that happened in residential schools here because of a way of looking down, not respecting, and that looking down and not respecting leads to destruction of the other, of their culture, but also physically. So the way we look has an impact. But we were also touched by the example of Tom, right? Yeah. I see resistance. In one phrase, we saw resistance to that which humiliates and destroys, and at the same, the peace and courage of reconciliation. No, you won't be fathers. we will be brothers. The first one is resistance. The second one, it's not automatic to say, we will be brothers. And I reflect how prophetic was Charles de Foucauld in the midst of when all this was happening, when he was reaching Tamanrasset, thanks to the colonizers, choosing a way that is different in terms of respecting culture, making the dictionary to preserve that culture, and doing a mission through being a brother. I want to accustom all Christians, Muslim, Jews, and not to consider me as their brother, the universal brother. So I appreciated the method that was proposed yesterday: unsettling unjust system, reclaim what is ours, rebuild relationships, actions in line with our values. The peace within, peace with what I did, peace with what happened to me, in order to share that. We don't have all the truth, but we respect. We are beggars of the truth. There is something in the other which it helps me to discover the truth. So the possibilities of action, actions that lower the walls of mistrust between persons and groups. There is always a wall that we build, no? After a week here, we start to make conclusions about that person, about the other, and maybe somehow the walls start to grow. At the same time, this week also we made decisions not to let those walls grow. We took time to listen. We took time to take interest in the culture of the other. What's behind the facade of this person that looks like this, but what's beneath in the heart? So that is one action that we can consolidate. Like we said yesterday, creating spaces that lead to healing, where people can speak, where their traumas can be held. We don't make magics, but we can hold the other person. People with the generosity of spreading peace, like the example of Tom, we can work on that in our prayer, in our fraternity, with our history, in order then to transmit that peace to others. The way of sharing faith through attraction and not imposition. And something also about our fraternities, how we can continue to collaborate beyond our fraternity with other countries as well. We can also work on collaborating with other groups in the church. Like here this week we had a good example of reaching out, working with others. That is also a way of creating fraternity. And one question that I think remains always important as an international fraternity, so there are ways of living fraternity, including the International Assembly. How to continue to evolve that, keeping in mind the limitations also of money, the differences between the different regions of the world, how to keep together the reality, the poverty of means, but also the call to create a wider fraternity. The mission remains there. The way how to do it can be modified, keeping in mind reality, but also widening up. An example was happening this week as well. I think it's the first time that we are not only meeting here, but also connecting with other countries through these resources that we have. and also recording that makes it possible to those who cannot connect, either because of the time or because of the internet level, that they can also receive and share in what we have experienced. So I invite you today to let this week help you widen the vision, to let Jesus, coming as a child in our home in Nazareth, help us to rediscover the treasure, to widen, to see the corners that we don't normally see. And also share good practices. Choose one thing that gives you joy and find how you can take it back to your fraternity. And help your fraternity to use the method that we have used. To listen widely, listen to the joys and listen to the sufferings. Reflect in the light of the life of Jesus, the spirituality of Charles de Foucauld, the teachings of the Church, and propose. In a simple way, humbly, but we can propose something which is beautiful. That is our mission, and this is our responsibility.